Welcome to The Vault at 201 North Broadway, podcast for innovators and problem solvers talking all things small business, entrepreneurship, and workforce development.
Our guest was inspired by our company's mission of connecting people to the outdoors and each other. Toby O'Rourke is a thought leader and visionary for outdoor hospitality and travel. As president and CEO of Kampgrounds of America, Inc., she oversees KOA, the world's largest branded system of campgrounds, with over 500 franchised and company-owned locations across North America. And fun fact, KOA is headquartered right here in Billings, Montana.
Thank you to Big Sky Economic Development for supporting The Vault at 201 North Broadway. Big Sky Economic Development provides leadership and resources for business creation, expansion, retention, new business recruitment, and community development.
Welcome, Toby.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, we're excited to have you and learn more about your journey and what brought you to KOA and more about KOA.
That's great.
Awesome. Well, so I guess we'll just kind of start. Did you grow up here in Billings?
I did not. I grew up in Sheridan, Montana, and I have
awesome.
to qualify the Montana when you live in Billings, close to Sheridan, Wyoming. But Sheridan, Montana is in the south west part of the state. It's over by Dillon, over by Twin Bridges, and in that area. Madison County, 700 people. So I grew up in a really small town. My high school class had 19. And growing up in southwest Montana, you think Billings is, like the end of the earth. Sometimes, it's really far east and it's a whole different part of the state. Looks different, feels different. So I never really expected to land here. I was out of state. I went to college out of state, lived in Chicago and Denver, and then wanted to get back to Montana. And KOA was hiring for a digital marketing director, which was my specialty. And that's what brought me to Billings. And so it's been 12 years, actually, almost to the day since I moved here.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's awesome.
Congratulations. We definitely appreciate you being here and all the things you do for the community since you've been a part of it. So that's awesome.
It's been great to be in Billings. I was saying earlier how I never expected to end up in Billings. I'm really happy to be here. I've really come to love Billings, met a lot of great people. I'm really proud of what Billings does and is working to do.
Yeah.
So I've really enjoyed being here, and this is a great place to raise my family. So I feel very fortunate to have landed here.
Oh, awesome.
So to back us up a little bit, you talked about being in Denver and Chicago. So what were some of the things that you were doing there? And you said the digital marketing experience that gave you that digital marketing experience to then apply for KOA.
Well, right after college, I went to school in the Midwest. I went to the University of Notre Dame. And right after college, I actually came back to Montana, and I had a job in Helena at Montana State Fund. So that's the state's workers' compensation insurance agency. My job was a software developer. So I started off my career in technology. After a few years there, I was pretty anxious to get to the big city, back to where my friends were at. I had a lot of friends from school in Chicago. And I got a job with Deloitte. So I was a technology consultant, continuing in the programming side of the business and then moving into more consultative work. Mm-hmm. And then I moved to a smaller boutique firm. So when I first went to Chicago, I was still very much in technology, but I decided to go to graduate school and get an MBA. And when I was getting my MBA at Northwestern is when I decided to transition into marketing. So I'd always had I was very creative, really liked data, was just very compelled towards brand management and marketing. So I took an internship during my time at Kellogg and at Sara Lee Corporation. Mm-hmm. And I was working on the Hillshire Farm smoked sausage brand.
Cool.
And decided to take a job with them. So I started working for them doing brand management work.
That's so cool. Can we just take a minute?
Yeah. That's so really unique because you see those brands, you hear them, you see them every time you're in the grocery store. But then to have...
so Sara Lee Corporation, owns, at the time, things have changed since then, but at Ballpark Franks and Hillshire Farm smoked sausage. They owned some coffee. They actually owned Hanes underwear.
Oh, interesting.
Wow.
These companies you never really think about. Plus the Sara Lee bread brands. So I worked on Hillshire Farm. Loved brand management, but because of my tech background, I naturally gravitated into digital marketing. So this was like 2008, I suppose, 7, 8, and brands were just starting to get into social media. That was pretty new to brands at that time. So that was a lot of stuff I got to do, which was really great. And also digital marketing, so digital advertising and website development. So I would work with the agencies. So that became my sweet spot and my area of specialty. And I decided to move to Denver to get closer to Montana is what drove me to Denver. And I took a job with White Wave Foods, which I worked on the Silk soy milk brand. So at the time, that was before they had almond milk. So that was primarily soy milk at the time. They now obviously have oat milks, almond milk, et cetera.
Cashew milk.
Yeah.
All
sorts.
Stuff.
All
they milk everything now.
Milk alternatives. Other brands that company owned was Horizon Organic Milk and International Delight Coffee Creamers.
What?
So I went there supporting the Canadian business, all things marketing for Canada, for Silk, but then ultimately started leading digital marketing across all the brands, like those brands I just mentioned and a few other of their new innovations, because that was skill sets that not a lot of marketers had at that time.
Yeah.
So it was a really great place to be. I loved it. It was really great to focus on something and really, gain a lot of experience. And I had a daughter who's now 12 and she's almost 13. And I just needed to be back home.
Yeah.
I just wanted to get back, get closer to my family. My sister lives in Helena or near Helena. And it was really important that we raise our kids together to me.
Yeah.
And
Cousin time, super important.
Yeah. And we do spend a lot of time together. And I started looking for jobs, interviewed for a couple jobs. Nothing really seemed to make sense until the KOA job came along. And that's exactly what they were hiring for, was a director of digital marketing, which was my skill set. And it just seemed to be, it was in the cards, if you will. So that's what brought me here. And that's my background that led me to this job. So I came into marketing, soon took over more than just digital, but all of marketing, and then worked my way up from there.
Oh, awesome.
So you've obviously moved up in KOA. Could you tell us your journey from when you started and to where you are now?
Right. So I came in leading digital marketing. At that time, we were in the midst of a big website transition. We weren't doing any digital advertising, mainly just print ads, small social media presence. But soon after I came on, we launched a mobile app, went heavy on digital, really brought down our print spend, et cetera, and went into more social media avenues. So it was really a great time to just get a lot going at KOA and get a lot going in that regard and digital, but soon took over all of marketing because I had a good background in it. And what I'm really excited, one of the most things I'm proud of there is we launched the first advertising campaign for the company. So they had done some ads here and there, but a real integrated campaign. It was called What's Behind the Yellow Sign. And that was,
that's so cute.
it's just the concept that, KOA has been around for 60 years. A lot of people have seen the yellow sign, but it was really telling people, well, what's behind it? What's modern KOA about? So that was a really fun campaign that took us heavy into PR, TV advertising, all the different facets of that campaign. What else do we do in marketing? We're mainly a digital marketing shop. I would venture to say we have the best marketers in the state by far. We've really built a really solid team with a lot of really good skill sets and experience. And we're leading a national brand, actually international, if Canada and the US, and doing really big work on behalf of this really big brand, which is really exciting. To your question, how I moved up is I had a really strong rapport with the CEO at the time. And we started to have some good talks about my career path, and he was nearing retirement and was very upfront. At the time he retired, he had been with the company 38 years.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And so we start probably a 5-year transition plan. So we began to work together, and I began to understand it was a possibility I could take his position. So we worked really closely on how that might happen, what things I needed to be exposed to, what sort of skill sets I needed to gain. And it put that in motion, several years before he left. And so that led me from not just taking over marketing, but all of our franchise operations. So our sales teams, our franchise services teams, and our technology department. A lot of people don't know that KOA has a technology department. We have our own software we develop.
Wow.
At KOA.
Which is great. I mean, we were just even thinking, when you guys have all these franchises and booking and everyone books everything online, you have to have a strong background and platform for all of that to function and not drop the ball for all of those users, that are trying to book their vacations.
Right. We have our own proprietary system that the parks manage their inventory on. And then the front end of that is KOA.com, which is definitely a powerhouse. We have a lot of traffic.
Yeah.
So we put a lot of money investing into those technologies. So I oversaw that, which worked well with my background. And what I had to learn at the business was the franchise side of franchising and more about campgrounds. There's a lot of things I just didn't know about campgrounds. Having been a food marketer, I just had to learn the hospitality side of the business, which was great. And then he named me president a year before he retired. And then when he did his full retirement, I took over the CEO title as well. So that's been 4 years since next month that I will have been the CEO of the company.
Awesome. Wow, that's awesome. So you mentioned that you had to learn a lot more about campgrounds. What was the most interesting thing that you were like, wow, I never thought about that?
Probably, it's not sexy to talk about, but sewer. We spend a lot of time talking about septic systems and water and, the utilities of a campground. Hookups. Yeah. So we franchise, and franchising business is all about services and training and support that we provide these business owners, which we're really passionate about entrepreneurism and fostering that. We also own 50 campgrounds.
Oh, okay.
So that's where, when I'm talking about a lot of the intricacies of utilities, it's on our owned parks and how do we develop parks and how much money it costs and issues we have. We have natural disasters really impact our business. Mm-hmm. So, for example, in 2017, Hurricane Irma completely wiped out a property we own in the Florida Keys.
Oh, wow.
And so we just now have it reopened. It's taken us that long because of permitting. And, you guys know that working in economic development, how you can't just say you're going to build something. It takes time. Because in the midst of all of that, not only was all of the Keys decimated, not just our property, but then COVID came along. So we had government shutdowns due to COVID. And so I learned a lot about, just all of the things that go into development of a property. And I just got back from there a couple weeks ago, and to see the end product is
it's beautiful.
So exciting. Yeah. It's something really to be proud of, that the team has done such a good job. So
they did a wonderful job. It is absolutely gorgeous. I was like, I need to book my stay.
It's beautiful.
In the Florida Keys.
But I think that, growing up in Montana, you have an idea of what camping is, but when people camp all sorts of different places, right? So where we camp in Montana, maybe in Woodbine or the KOA here in town, which is beautiful. Camping on the Florida Keys is something completely different. And we've got properties in the desert. And we have properties, next to these mountain lakes, to the sides of oceans. I mean, it's just such a variety of, and plus people camp different ways. So tenting and RVing and, cabins, we're leaning into glamping. So probably just learning all the different ways people experience the outdoors was something I had never really thought about until I started working here.
Oh, that's awesome.
Did you grow up? Did you camp heavily when you were younger?
We did. We're definitely an outdoor-oriented family. So, I grew up fishing and hunting and hiking, and we would tent camp. We didn't have an RV, but we tent camped. I think before my parents had me, they had like some sort of pop-up or something along those lines. But I absolutely have memories of tent camping, hiking into lakes and camping. And there was a KOA in Alder, Montana, which is even smaller than Sheridan, which is 9 miles. I remember hanging out at the KOA there because someone I was in school with, their parents owned it at the time.
Oh, wow.
So I had a little bit of exposure to the brand, but hadn't really thought. I didn't know it was headquartered in Montana. I didn't know it was a Montana-based business at all until I got the job here. And I think a lot of people in this community don't know that KOA is headquartered here.
That's exactly why we were like, we need Toby on, because I don't think a lot of people know that you're headquartered here, but I'm also not going to take it away. Tell us where the very first KOA ever was.
Yeah, we're headquartered here because the first KOA was here in Billings. So a man by the name of Dave Drum, 61 years ago, in 1962, he owned some land very near where the KOA is now, down by the river. And that was when the interstate system was being built.
Oh, okay.
So he bought this land thinking that the government would pay for that land to build the interstate. And the government actually built the interstate. It didn't cross his land, so he didn't know what quite to do with it. And it's really interesting how he worked with the city to discuss this idea of a campground, and the city actually helped him get it going. That's because awesome. At that time, people would just camp anywhere. They'd park in, church parking lots or on the sides of roads, or et cetera. So it was the boondocking was a little bit of a problem for municipalities. So they liked the idea and helped him move that project along and opened up the first KOA, what became the first KOA. And then it was very successful because people were traveling to the Seattle World's Fair that year.
Oh, wow.
So that's where he really started to bring in customers. And him and another man named John Wallace, they did a lot of research. They'd go out and, ask people what they wanted. And so we still have a really strong penchant for research at KOA. And I think that goes way back to how we were founded and asking customers about their stay so we can improve the experience. And so they decided to franchise the business. And the first franchise was in Cody, Wyoming. And then it quickly went across the country. At one time, KOA had 900 or so KOAs.
Wow.
It was a model that really resonated with a lot of people.
Yeah.
You mentioned COVID, and we haven't talked a lot about that on the podcast, but because you guys are campgrounds, did you see a large uptick in usage at your locations during COVID?
We did. Our business really blew up and still is blowing up as a result of the pandemic. So just like every other sort of service-based business, we faced shutdowns right at the beginning, except in Montana, it was very pro-business friendly. And I think they understood our business model, and, it was easy to keep our campgrounds open in Montana, but we really had to fight that across the country and explaining what campgrounds were and why they needed to stay open, et cetera. But by June, everything was fully open. And because people were in their homes all the time during the shutdown, they wanted to get outside. So we just saw this influx of people trying camping for the first time. They were buying RVs, renting RVs. They didn't want to get on airplanes or they didn't want to stay in a hotel, so they would come to the campground. So we saw a huge spike in the amount of people. I think that first year, 10 million new households started camping in the United States. And, our business, where it ended last year versus 2019, was 30% up.
Wow.
Because we're still riding that wave of all these new people that have come out to camp. And we're not seeing that slow down. There's some...
Because they got the taste and they're like, I got to do more.
Exactly. People enjoy it. They come back. There's some that like, this wasn't for me. But the majority, I would say 50, let's say half of all these new campers are now keeping it in their travel considerations, which is great. And now as we head into this, uncertain economic time, camping also does really well because it's largely viewed as this affordable activity. If they already own an RV, they're like, let's use our RV this year for our vacation instead of flying to Disneyland, for example. So coming out the last recession, we actually did really well. And so we anticipate, and we're seeing that play back in our research and our numbers, that people are saying, hey, I'm going to camp more this year just because I am uncertain about the economy.
You talked a little bit about glamping. And so you guys launched another brand recently in the past couple of years. Can you talk a little bit about that and what led you guys to pursue that new brand?
We did. We launched a new brand called Terramore Outdoor Resorts in 2020, actually right in the middle of the pandemic. The name Terramore derives from terra, meaning land, and amor, meaning love. So it's all about love of land. It's definitely different than a KOA. It's an outdoor hotel, if you will. Canvas tents. We have 60 canvas tents at our flagship location in Bar Harbor, Maine, with bathrooms and very high-end amenities on the park. We're putting in a spa tent right now.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
We have a lodge. We have really good food service, or a restaurant and a bar, and a swimming pool. So it's all the things you would expect at a resort, but in the outdoors. Mm-hmm. Why we launched that brand is we've been watching the space for a few years and seeing this rise of interest in unique vacations and unique ways to stay. And there was some glamping, probably the pinnacle of glamping is Paws Up right here in Montana. They sort of really brought that concept to the U.S. There's a couple places like that across the country, safari tents and such. You think about African safaris. So there's increasing interest, particularly among millennial families and millennial couples, just looking for more adventure, right? And different ways to stay. So we started to see this trend peak around glamping, in quotes. We owned 2 KOAs in Bar Harbor, Maine, right outside of Acadia National Park. One's right on the ocean. It's really cool. The other one was nice. It was more inland in thickly dense woods. We decided to try to play in this space. So we started working on this Terramore concept I don't know, 4 years before we opened it. We had to work on the brand, you know, and because of our ability to market, we felt really confident we could develop a brand that meant something to people, but then we had to develop the park. And so we're now headed into our 3rd year. It's really high occupancy, really positive reception, repeat business. We've got really great media attention on it. And now we're actively working to expand that into other markets, which we're really excited about, even working on some here closer to home, which is great too. Beyond Terramore, we also have glamping accommodations, a lot of KOAs too. So it just speaks to a different type of guest. People want unique ways to stay. And we purposely didn't call Terramore a KOA because we wanted to appeal to a different guest that wouldn't consider camping. And we don't call it glamping because I still think that might be a little bit of a cliche word that fizzles out at some point. So we went with the outdoor resort category, and we target towards people that typically would go to a resort or, you know, look for an Airbnb or something in a local market.
Oh, that's so cool. And now I want to go to Maine.
I know.
Right, and they gain a different, like you were talking about, just a completely different experience where they are more in nature, which seems to be a rising thing that people are desiring. So I want to go too.
Yeah.
It's really special. I'm really excited to bring the concept to Montana so that all these people that know us as KOA can come see what else we've done, because it's really special place. It's really great.
Oh, well, we'll make sure we put some photos up of Terramore so people can see the beauty of it.
And it's a pretty name too, and well thought out, knowing what it means. And
we worked with a really great branding agency out of near San Francisco who had done some work on some hotel in a similar space, and we had a lot of fun. It's even fun to look back and think about the different range of ideas we had. I'm really glad we landed on Terramore. It just has fit, and it's been something we have a lot of extensions with. So even in the artwork we use, you'll see like the topography lines mixed with stars, very tastefully done. But that's even on all the headboards and all of the tents is using that unique imagery because it speaks to that land and sky connection. And we have a lot of unique even lanterns that project like stars. And so it's fun to that's what we do. That's what I love is branding. It's taking something and then expressing it across everything we do. We even have it a signature scent for the location.
That's so cool.
And we actually worked with a place in Bozeman that helped us develop that. We sell the candles and the diffusers. And as we expand our locations, we'll develop a scent for each specific location that really speaks to that area and the land. So it's probably been the highlight of my career is working on that project.
So what is the scent for Bar Harbor, Maine?
Well, I couldn't really explain it. It has I think we just I'll have to get you guys some candles. It's hard. It's going to be hard to tell those listening, but it's a beautiful smell, and it definitely, I don't even know if I could describe it, but
yeah.
And what a great way for people to take that as they leave. And so when they light that in their home, it just reminds them of all of those memories and that special place that they had that experience, and that scent will forever remind them of that.
Yeah. We're so experiential, everybody is, and so it's a song or a smell or food will take you back to a memory. So I think that the scent will do that.
That's special.
You've mentioned several times that not only does KOA own several KOA properties, but they also franchise out. So for people listening that are like, hey, maybe I want to be a KOA franchisee, what does that look like?
Yeah, it's a really great question. It's great. It's a great business. We see a lot of people who love camping, love the outdoors. Maybe as they retire, we have a lot of people come in that say, hey, I'm going to run a campground. I've always wanted to do that. But more and more, we're seeing it become, I don't want to say professionalized, but a lot more investors coming into the space. Maybe they're coming out of a different business and they're investing their money now and they're becoming multi-campground owners and bringing in professional managers. So the space is changing because it's become very lucrative, and a lot of people, because of what we talked about, people coming into camp, people want to get in the business. But how you would get started is we have a franchise development department, system development. You could go to ownakoa.com, which talks all about being a franchisee of KOA and what that means. And then we just work you through the process. We actually have a really low fee when I look at what other franchises cost. I'm like, I love the business of franchising. It's interesting to see how different franchises are set up. we haven't made a lot of changes probably from 50 years ago when they first started rolling out the franchise system. So it's a pretty low cost to enter. There's a royalty fee you pay off your registration, the nightly fees, but all your store sales and propane, everything else is kept by the franchisee.
Oh, nice.
And then for that royalty, we market them. Most people come to us for the brand, but also to get our technology stack, training. We've got designers that'll design campground for you or help you expand your campground. We have people that focus on merchandise or product or connecting you to vendors to help your campground. And we have, a lot of a big convention. We've got a lot of ways we focus on connecting people to each other, peer networks. And so I think they get a lot of support. Like I said, we really focus on entrepreneurism, and it's our job to make the franchisee successful and feel supported.
I love that, because we have people who come to us wanting to start franchises, and they're like, I'm like, well, what kind of training are they going to provide you? No, they'll just give me some documents. And I'm like, I wish you could go spend time in one of their locations and learn the processes and things like that. So it sounds really good that you guys have all those resources and support, as well as providing them a trusted brand.
Right. It's like I said, people come for different reasons. Most of the time they're coming for the brand. Sometimes they're coming for the technology, but the wide array of support services we have business development consultants that help them with every aspect of their business and analyzing their financials. We've got training resources, a full online library of training for their staff, lots of collateral materials, and they might not expect that coming in, and that's definitely reasons they stay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A huge value add that they don't have to then go and
Don't
create
have to worry
those
about
things.
it. It's expensive, even just the website alone to be able to keep up with how you have to, drive people to your website and keep up with your digital listings. I've got staff that does that for you. You don't have to do that. It's a huge time investment, and maybe that's not what you don't know anything about digital marketing. So it's best to partner with a brand that can handle that for you.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
So shifting a little bit to talk about, KOA at a more corporate level, a lot of people comment on KOA's culture. So could you describe your culture and maybe some of those elements to how you cultivate your culture at KOA?
Yeah, I think our culture is really special, and I don't think that's on me. I think the culture's always been special at KOA. When I came to KOA, it was noticeable to me that it was different than any place I'd ever worked before. And what we did, we set out to articulate that culture, if you will. We call it our DNA, which, a lot of people say are your mission and your values of your company. But to us, it's the DNA, because I don't think that the DNA of the company has changed. That's what's cool about DNA. It's inherent, right?
Yeah.
Inherited, and you take care of it, and it's passed down. So our vision is to be the world leader in advancing the business of outdoor hospitality. And I think that was the same vision that Dave Drum had. And that really fuels the values we have, and one of which is being progressive. So we're always looking to be innovative. And we really try to foster that within our culture is, keep improving, and that's something I'm really big on, is we're always focused on process improvement. How do we modernize and how do we be progressive? Another core thing about our culture is being family oriented. And that was something that was very noticeable to me, and we really work hard to preserve. We're definitely, I would say, probably family first, for sure. And that shows up in lots of different ways. First of all, we're owned by a family that's owned us for 45 years. We, our campgrounds, many are managed by multi-generation families, or, this has been passed down in their business. Families camp with us, obviously, but here at Billings at the home office, it is never a question about if you need to be somewhere where your kids are, that's where you are. If you need time off, there's always someone's kids at the office. We're just very much a family culture. And I feel like we call ourselves the KOA family, and that's the embodiment of not just the people in the home office, but everybody that works at KOA and our franchisees. And when people join, we're like, welcome to the KOA family, because I think we really do operate that way. And I think that probably represents the culture the most, but it's definitely focused on taking care of each other, being progressive and modernizing our brand, focusing on entrepreneurism. That's another core value. That's probably the best way I can describe it. We really just try to foster a place where people want to be. You spend so much of your life there
at work.
Yeah.
That and I hear that played back to me a lot too. It's like people talk about our culture, and I'm pretty proud of that because we work hard at it. We want to make sure that, and we're doing employee engagement surveys. It's getting ready to get this year's out pretty soon because we want to keep on top of it, and not everything's always perfect. We want to find where those areas of improvement are needed so we can invest in that and get better.
Yeah, key things that you focus on. And I think it can be kind of definitely scary to be innovative and progressive, but it helps weed out some of the people who aren't on board. And so I think that's one way that you have really helped just emphasize that culture is those people who also appreciate those things and are on board, stay with you. And yeah.
Yeah, and my leadership style, when I became CEO, I actually created this image that you'll see it around the building if you came over. It's a kaleidoscope, and it took our logo and made a kaleidoscope. And it's really based off several things that I think are infused in our culture because that's the way, I lead in my expectations. And one of which is you look at a kaleidoscope, you see all these different pieces, right, coming together to create something beautiful. And that's all about collaboration. So that's another big part of our culture is we cross-functionally collaborate a lot. And it's pretty easy for a company to break into departmental silos, but we really continually focus on, our ideas are better when we're bringing in it's part of the inclusion, bringing multiple ideas to the table. The other thing about a kaleidoscope is if you turn it, it adjusts and it's a new picture, and big on process improvement to where you were just at. So we can constantly do it differently. What didn't work, what did work, how do we tweak it? And then the last part is when you put it up to light, the light shines through. And I'm really big on transparent communication. It's just better to be transparent, communicate with each other, and that just moves us farther ahead. So those three things I would say would also encapsulate what our culture is, that we strive to be definitely collaborative and continue to improve and just communicate openly with each other.
Yeah. What a creative way to show and explain that by using a kaleidoscope. I mean, that is outrageously cool.
I had this kaleidoscope. It's a really cool, I still have it, this really cool kaleidoscope that someone gave me when I was a consultant, a client gave me. I was leaving the engagement. Maybe it's when I was transitioning to a whole new career path into marketing. And she gave me that as a gift. And I've always had that in my office. And I remember I don't even know how I came to it, but something about that kaleidoscope really resonates with me. And I know what it was. When I was in part of the Leadership Montana program, we were supposed to bring a symbol of our leadership. And I think that's when I came to that concept of a kaleidoscope. Yeah. And I took that and so later when I became CEO, I decided to build off that. And then we work, Heinz Creative here in town is long time, does a lot of our graphic design work. And Joe made me this beautiful kaleidoscope, probably like no time at all, and taking our logo. And it's beautiful. And I have it, a metal print of it in my office. And I like it because it symbolizes me, but it symbolizes the whole company and it's how we work together.
Yeah. And in three ways that are memorable.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So being now CEO, president, what were some things that leading up to this role that you have now that really stood out to you as far as leadership, leading a team, leading a company, leading a brand, that really stood out to you, good or bad, that you've taken with you into how you lead today?
Well, I just did an interview. I was just interviewed for an article about being a female leader. And so that's very top of mind for me. And because I think some things I took away is I've had some really strong, great examples of female leadership that, demonstrated how to be assertive, but not aggressive. And I think that's super important. And I always try to share that with people too. Like there's a fine line to be assertive and own the room and gain the respect, but you don't want to be aggressive. That's definitely one thing I've carried forward and try to model. Also, being empathetic, I think, is such a quality that is so important in leadership. And also just having emotional intelligence to understand how you have to adapt to work with each person differently. And that's definitely key to my leadership style, is understanding how that person receives feedback or how that person's motivated. And it's going to be different for every person on my team. And I have a multi-generational and diverse group of executives that report to me, and I have to work with each of them differently. So I think being adaptable is really, really key. And the other thing that I'm a big believer in leadership is advocacy. So I think I got to my position because, I worked really hard, but also I had strong advocates. And we talked about my predecessor. He was a good advocate for me. in not just mentoring me, but an advocate, fights for you, puts you in the positions you need to be, sponsors you to decision makers, creates paths for you. And I think advocacy is the key for leaders. We need to be advocates for and I hope I'm advocates for lots of different people. It's not just about being for women, but how you bring people up through an organization or teach them or coach them is one thing, but you need to advocate and help make things happen. So those are some takeaways I've had that I try to employ because people did that for me.
Mm-hmm. And things that, I love that example, the advocate and how your predecessor helped pave that way. I think that's so important.
And before him, at some of my previous jobs, like the woman I was talking about earlier being, assertive, not aggressive, she was a really strong advocate. Like she just, really would go to bat for her people and, really advocated for my promotions and worked hard because these are big companies where you would just get lost in the shuffle if you didn't have someone being your sponsor. And
that's so impressionable, clearly, like on you to then do that to now when you're in that role.
Right. Yeah, I think that's really important that more people need to think about it I love mentorship and I've had some great mentor relationships, but advocacy is, I think, where we really can bring people up.
Speaking of advocacy and having a team of people, how do you hire the right person? What would be your tips to all those small business owners out there where they are kind of their own HR department?
Yeah, it's funny you say that, and I'll tell you why it's funny, because KOA didn't really have a formal HR department until a few years ago.
Oh, wow.
I can't believe that we went so long without really formal. Now we've got a large HR team, and it's so critical. And I don't know how we went so long without it. It was something I was really passionate about because I had seen how HR teams worked and functioned. And I know that wasn't your question, but HR is super important. How I hire people, we were talking about values earlier, right? And mission of your company. I think if you're really set in what the mission of your company is, what your values are, you hire for that. You hire for people that share that passion and demonstrate those values. So when I'm interviewing somebody, I like to really talk about our DNA. And if people are responding to that and excited about that, then they're probably definitely getting to the next interview because it needs to resonate with you. Otherwise, and I tell people all the time, it's okay if this set of DNA, because beyond our mission and values, we have core beliefs and lots of stuff that could really stir somebody's soul. I mean, if it doesn't resonate with you then this probably isn't the place for you, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And it's the same to our franchisees. Maybe this doesn't mean something to you and you don't have to be a part of the brand. This is what we represent. So when I hire, I look for people that really share those same passions and that has that DNA that we have. And that's right there going to get them farther ahead, in the job interview process. And I think you can teach the job. I mean, obviously you want a good base level of skills, but they have to believe in what the business you're in. Yeah.
And I think you see that with your team. I just remember coming to your groundbreaking ceremony and you just see your sea of yellow, which is so cool, but they all just there's a camaraderie there that I think you don't always see within organizations. And it's clearly something special that KOA has created and cultivated. Yeah, that you see in your team.
I think you're right. We've got such a great team. We tend to seek out people that, love the outdoors, are passionate about outdoor hospitality, or, their particular contribution to the business that we're in, and we do support each other as a family, and I think we act as such, and that does come through. So when we're interviewing, culture fit's a big deal. And I've had to make decisions to let people go because it wasn't the right culture fit, and that's really, really hard. But another thing I've learned is that if you don't take care of those issues, that spreads throughout, and that
it festers.
That erodes culture. So to preserve culture, I've had to make some tough decisions from time to time.
Which is, that's so interesting. But I think in the long run, it definitely probably has saved your company from dealing with some other issues that could have been caused.
Yeah, for sure. And you want to keep your best people motivated. And so you've got to respond to, if there's serious problems on the team and my best people aren't productive or happy, and I've gotten better. It's over my career about taking care of those things faster than letting them fester, but it's always hard.
Yeah.
I have a weird drawing that I do to explain what you're talking about.
Is it your boat one?
It's my boat. I draw a boat, and I draw people rowing in the front of the boat, and those are your performers. Those are your people who are actively participating. They're happy to be there. They're passionate. They share the same mission and culture that you're want in your business. And then you have the people in the middle of the boat where maybe they come to work every day. They'll row every once in a while, but they're just content being there. They're not bringing like new ideas to the table. Then you have the people in the back of the boat. And instead of having paddles, they actually have hammers. And they're hammering holes in the boat. And I say all the time, if you have these people, these actively disengaged people who are hammering holes in your boat, no matter how hard those couple of people in the front are rowing, you're never going to get anywhere. Your boat's still going to sink. So you got to cut the hammer smashers out so then you can be healthy, because that could also help those people who are just sitting in the middle get excited again, because they're around the people that are passionate and excited versus listening to the people hammering the holes in your boat.
Yeah, that's an excellent analogy. I absolutely agree. I'll probably steal that.
If you want to see me draw my boat, I will. I will draw my boat. But yeah, I mean, I think it just perfectly explains what you're talking about. You just got to cut them so you can be happy. Yeah. Not actually cut them, but let them go.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is it ties into culture, and kind of the things we're talking about is being candid, being able, we talked about transparent, but just be candid. That Radical Candor book, if you ever read it, that one really resonated with me. I read a few years ago, and that's definitely a way I try to lead the team, is just, we have to be able to have open conversations, give each other feedback both ways. And sometimes you can cut through some of that, maybe get those hammer smashers to grab a row if you can just have some good radical, candid discussions. Sometimes it doesn't work, but try and hopefully.
And I think with that, promoting transparent communication and being candid, you are also creating that environment of it's comfortable to do that. You're not scared to bring up what an issue is if it's happening, which I think is very important. That's another element to that, is like, you can say front and back all day, every day, like, we're transparent communicators, but if you don't feel comfortable or like promote that comfortability, then they're not going to do it.
Yeah. So. And I think we've gotten so much better. We always improve. It's something you have to constantly work at. We're definitely not perfect. Yeah. And I'm sure there's someone that'll probably listen and say, well, I don't feel comfortable. Like, we try, though. That's really the goal, is we try. And I hope that we create that welcoming atmosphere so you can raise those questions. And we have course corrected. We've said, okay, yeah, you're right. That's not the right way we should be doing this, or let's rethink this. So I hope that we demonstrate that. We try to.
Which is cool. So I have a question. It's going to take us on a little bit of a different topic area, but I know your day-to-day probably does not look the same every single day, but what are some things that you do to really set time for yourself to do like strategic direction and just your day, your week? You travel a lot, you have different locations you're visiting.
Yeah, I think time management's a huge struggle. I don't think it does anyone. It disservices everybody to act like you have everything together, right? And so it's hard. I have 4 kids, so a lot of my challenge is balancing time. I'm a very active and present mom, or strive to be, and keep up with work. So setting those time blocks is super important. I actually do a lot of my work, like on the things you're suggesting, early morning. So I wake up super early before the kids are up and before my team's on email. And so that I get the most of my work done at home really early in the morning. I'm not a big night person. I used to be, but after
I'm in bed by 9 p.m. or earlier.
As soon as the baby's down, the last one, I'm in bed because I get up so early. But that's works for me. I've actively tried to set blocks of time on my schedule that I try to stick to, where I'm constantly trying to tweak that. I block a couple hours, like the first 2 hours of the day are really productive for me to, if I can get to the office and can be hitting the ground running, coming off the work I've done at home, and a lot of times that work's personal work, right? So to keep up with 4 kids' schedules, oftentimes that 2 hours of work in the morning is just doing the scheduling and making sure I'm caught up on all the things the kids need to do. It's not always office work. We as a company, though, have been implementing the EOS model. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but EOS stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System. It's fantastic. We started a year ago on the implementation of this, and to tackle strategic planning, variety of things. It's a whole discipline and methodology that we've been working to employ. So just yesterday, for example, we had my strategic leadership team's quarterly meeting. So there's a whole structure, and we tried to do that anyway prior to EOS, but going through the way they structure it really does allow us time as a team to do the strategic planning work we need to do. So it's given us good structure in setting our 3 and 5 year vision and goals. And then when we meet, we're reviewing and seeing how we're tracking against that, and then setting quarterly objectives. And I would highly recommend it. It's all based off a book called Traction. But within there's a lot of different things that we do as a team to work on strategic planning, and also guidance about what you should do individually. So taking time like once a month away from the office, maybe coffee shop, not email, maybe just however you do it. I use Evernote, but maybe you have a notebook and you're doing your work and your process. So I'm trying to set aside that time. Actually, when I travel is when I get a ton of that work done, because it's a lot of time in airplanes. Mm-hmm. And so I can get a lot of that work done. And I'm up by myself in the hotel at night versus
kiddos and
hockey practice and stuff. So I tend to get a lot of maybe more of that thinking time work done when I am on the road, just because I'm filling my time because I'm by myself. So, but it's constantly a challenge and a struggle. And I think you got to schedule time. I always tell our franchisees to work on your business, not just in your business, because
I love that.
And that applies to everybody, because you get really caught up. I feel like sometimes my day is 20 hours long, just like all of yours, I'm sure. And you're like, all I did was did stuff all day. I didn't really think about the business. So you have to schedule that time. And I'm constantly just trying to figure out when to do that. It's the best time to do it. But
at least scheduling it and then honoring that you scheduled it, even if you have 100 other things to do, and just being like, no, I can't. I need to honor that I need this time.
Setting those blocks of time are super important, because if you don't do that, you'll never sit down and work on it. You'll just get caught up in the latest,
the day-to-day.
The thing of the urgent instead of making the time.
I have to put everything on my calendar. Yeah. So then I know. And then if I don't get it done, it slaps to the next day. And then,
I even put personal stuff, because like Austin's like, oh, can we do dinner or whatever? I'm like, please send me a calendar invite. It's just so that I don't forget.
No, everything has to be scheduled for
me.
With between the things the kids are doing or work, or my husband and I will set appointments on each other's calendars, and it all has a magic of working together.
It works.
If it doesn't make the calendar or my Trello boards, it will not get done, because I will forget about it, because it's the minute you tell me, if I don't get it somewhere, I'm going to move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
Ryan downstairs here, I got him sticky notes so that when I am down there, I can write my note to myself that he needs me to do or whatever. So then by the time I get upstairs, I don't
remember
forget
it. Yeah, I totally get that.
But little things and tips, that's helpful.
So we do want to touch base on, you guys are opening a new headquarters. And so what has that process been like? Tell everybody what part of town it will be.
Yeah, we're really excited about it. So KOA's been in our current space down on, downtown here for 45 years. And it's great. We're in the Transwestern 3 building. We're part of the office park development over there. And we love being downtown. We really wanted to have our own building that we could really express our brand. And I think KOA's been working on it for 20 years to find a piece of land or transform a building, like long before me being in leadership here. KOA's been working on where is the headquarters going to be.
Yeah.
But we got really fortunate to find a beautiful piece of land in the TransTech Center. And we're actually up on a hill, so we have a really pretty view. We've got trees, there's water. It's a really great way for us to bring the outdoors to the indoor environment. And we worked with A&E Architects to design this gorgeous space that utilizes lots of glass, lots of natural elements, has a big walkout deck space, if you will, patio, I guess, space off our training area. We're going to have fire pits, some hammocks. So just lots of ways to, again, integrate indoor and outdoors, because that's really important to us, being an outdoor-oriented company. And going back a couple years, I guess we bought that land in 2020. and we're working on the design with Annie. And so they broke ground on it just over a year ago, and we should be moved in this August is our plan to move in
That's
August.
so exciting.
So exciting.
Yeah, and Langless is our contractor, and everybody's doing a really great job. It's just a beautiful building.
And to add those components too, that will probably spur also just some creative ideas from your team, like sitting out in a hammock or around a fireplace, and the conversations and the things that will just be spurred from those outdoor moments will be probably pretty special.
That's a good point. And even within the building, we have a big emphasis on soft workspace. So our office sizes, physical offices, are smaller than what we have now, but we have a lot more soft workspace to encourage group collaboration. Again, going back to how we want to work together, but lots of just comfortable and funky and cool spaces around the building, because it's winter here a lot. So you're not going to go out in the hammocks in the winter, but you're going to have these nice spaces around the building to go work. The lobby in itself is designed to be a soft workspace. So we anticipate and hope, and I'll try to model that to get everybody going, is go sit by the fireplace in the lobby or sit by the windows. And it's just going to be, again, to your point, spark a lot of creativity. A lot of people just thinking differently, and it's not your standard office space, if you will.
Well, in training space, it sounds like, so will that be just for your local team, or will you bring other team members, franchisees in to do some of those trainings?
We do that now. We have what we call KOA University. We bring franchisees here as they join the company or their managers several times a year. We also have a manager's school where we are teaching how to become a campground manager. We've done graduate school, quote unquote, programs. So we're bringing franchisees in a lot. And so we wanted to make sure we had a really great space for that. So we do have a pretty big training space. We call it the base camp in the new building.
I love that.
It's the lower level, but
fun.
it's better than saying the basement. But it's
Same. That's why we call it the lower level here.
It does walk out to that outdoor patio, like I said. So it's a pretty cool space. Lots of trees around you as you walk out. It's beautiful. But we also, it's large enough. We'd like it to be, community usage if they'd like to as well. So we're hoping that, people come visit us and use the space. We don't use our training space now all the time. We have people in, throughout the year, but there'll be a lot of opportunity for other people to use it.
Oh, that's
Boards and
so cool.
different things. Yeah. We'd love to have a board meeting out there once you guys are up.
You are
and running.
more than welcome anytime.
Maybe we'll convince Steve to not do it at 7 a.m.
My husband's on your board.
I know.
That's 7 a.m. once a month. I'm like, oh, right. So I got that on the calendar. So it doesn't. It's totally fine. It's just we
tease Steve about it.
Coordinating our schedules is just, okay, who's taking kids this morning? I have to be downtown at 7 a.m.
Yeah, because he thinks everybody loves it. And I'm like, I think you like it, Steve. I think the board members wouldn't mind a 12 in the afternoon meeting.
I'm on the Chamber of Commerce board, and we meet the end of the day.
3 to 5, I think, right?
Yeah, we just had a meeting this week at RVU, which was fun to use a different space. And we meet at the end of the day. I don't know which one's better. I'm an early bird, so I'd probably be fine with the early morning meetings as long as DJ and I are not both at the same time.
Meeting at the same time.
We'd be just fine, yeah.
Oh, awesome. Well, we really appreciate you coming on today. And we always like to end the podcast with some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
But we're going to take a moment to hear from our sponsor.
Thank you to the Small Business Development Center for sponsoring The Vault at 201 North Broadway. The Small Business Development Center provides you with free one-on-one counseling, business plan assistance, marketing research, financial projection assistance, and more to small businesses.
My question for you is, what is your favorite camping spot?
Woodbine.
Okay.
Here, if I'm picking a KOA, I would say Townsend, Tennessee's KOA outside of Great Smoky National Park. It's so beautiful, but close to home, we love to go to Woodbine.
Great.
What is a favorite book that you have read in the past year?
Well, I just finished reading the book Essentialism, and I've just started reading it again, actually, because there's so much good stuff in there that I felt that I missed it the first time. So I highly recommend that book.
What is one thing you do to relax or de-stress?
I like to take baths. That's kind of strange, but at the end of the day, like, I get excited to take a bath.
Yeah.
And I go outside.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think the outdoors is a de-stressor for me. It's not just the business I'm in, but I notice if I don't get outdoor time, then I'm very agitated. So
Yeah, I think there's something special about nature, just being outside, sunshine, or just
Fresh
like
air.
fresh air.
Yeah.
Right. That's special.
even if it's just a few minutes. So
Awesome.
Well, Toby, thank you so much for being on The Vault podcast. It's been so much fun talking with you, and we just really appreciate your time and all the investment and things you're doing for our Billings community. We're lucky to have you here.
well, thanks for having me. I think you guys are doing great things. I've been really impressed with the work that this team does, and it's fun to follow all of your travels and everything you guys are doing to build Billings. So thanks for
Thank
having
you.
me.
Thank you for joining. You can find the resources and tools mentioned in today's episode at thevault201.com. If you like this episode, be sure to subscribe and share with a friend.